Hi there again. This video is for entertainment purposes only. Thank you for visiting my channel once again. Please do not forget to press the subscribe button, give a thumbs up for like, leave a comment, and please do share. Now, this is the third video of a series of videos that I'm doing on the playbook of supremacist ideology and practices. I think we will end up with about 5 in the series because, believe me, the playbook on supremacist ideology and practices is a rather long one. But before we begin, let me introduce myself. And I do read, so do forgive me. It's not that I don't know what I'm talking about, but I don't want to forget anything. My name is Winifred Davis. Well, I remember that. I have been a shaman, psychic medium, traditional and spiritual counselor, healer for the past 37, almost 38 years. I'm also an author, essayist, poet, and former spoken word movement performer. Now, I subscribe to no religion, and when I say that, I mean I subscribe to absolutely no religion. I'm a-religious or irreligious, whatever the term might be, the proper term. Now, I believe in universal justice. With the impostor justice of man, there's an exception to every rule, but with universal justice, there are no exceptions to its rules. I believe in the truth. The truth has no my side, your side. The truth stands unopposed. Now, please remember that I'm not here to convert or to lead anyone. I do not want to be the leader of anything, as I do not want to be led by anyone. My duty is only to my conscience, and that conscience is the light that guides the free will I was given at creation. Each of us was given free will and a conscience, that light to guide that free will. That free will is what links us back to the Creator. That free will is what makes us responsible, each of us responsible and accountable for our own actions. We can't blame our general, our king, country, president, parents, the bully. Each of us is responsible and accountable for our own actions. Now, I'm just a vessel, and I'm not perfect. Believe me, I'm not. None of us on earth is perfect. That's why we're all here. Now, as I said, I'm just a vessel, a messenger. And I'm a messenger for the collective. Who is the collective, or who are the collective? The collective are my guides, my many guides, and members of the higher hierarchies, which includes the archangels. Now, each of us can connect with the members of the higher hierarchies. We're not special. If I say that I do, I'm not special. Each of us has the ability to do just that. Now, what I'm doing as a messenger and a vessel is what I chose to do and what I was called to do as well. And I was called to do certain things based on my soul journeys. The journey of my soul comprised of many different journeys and the experiences, the expiation that I've had. Now, the messages I'm given, they are rather harsh at times, brutal, I would say, but only by facing the truth, because they are the truth, can we bring equilibrium to our souls and ascend that ladder of soul restoration. The journey is arduous at times, that ascent is arduous, but that we must do. So we have to look in that mirror of self-reflection. And sometimes the image that we see, the reflection we see, it's not a pretty one, believe me, I know. But face it, we must And only by facing and admitting to that reflection can we do better, correct our incorrect actions, and continue that ascent up the ladder. Now, some people move up that ladder faster than others. Others prefer to rest on the lower rungs. But eventually, it's not a question of if, but one of when each of us will indeed ascend that ladder and bring equilibrium to our soul. And once we're on earth, there's no one who's perfect on earth. Okay, we're all imperfect to a greater or lesser degree. Now, as I said, this is what I accepted. This is my part of my Neptunian journey, to be that messenger. And that conscience, once again, that we were given, is what makes each of us responsible for our own actions. And as I said, I'm not here to lead or to convert anyone, because each man must evolve according to his own light. Now, please, it's very important. Please do not freely interpret what I say. Say exactly what I say. If I say the sky is blue, I mean it's blue. All shades of blue would be included. Even though it's the sky, I didn't say sky blue, I said blue. That means all shades of blue. And if I say that a tiny fish is in a small aquarium, I mean a tiny fish is in a small aquarium. Do not freely interpret, because by the time one person interprets and gives that their interpretation to another person, and they do just exactly that, and you get to the 10th person, the tiny fish has become a big old whale. A whale is not even a fish, it's a mammal, and that small aquarium has become a vast ocean. Now I deliver my messages as I get them. Somigeti, as my great-grandmother Ella would say, somiselit. As I get them, I deliver them exactly as I get them. Now I call out injustice and folly when I see it, even with myself. I'm never without my mirror of self-reflection. As I said, sometimes it's not a pretty sight. I have no favorites. And I don't preach bigotry and hatred. If you're a true messenger, you don't preach bigotry, hatred, and separation. You will call out folly. And you will give advice as to how we can get better. So do not use my calling out, whether of my Jewish brothers, or I should say our Jewish brothers, or our Afrocentric and Jamaican brothers, or our white brothers or North African brothers, whomever it is. When I call out the folly, do not use it as an excuse for bigotry, right? Say exactly what I say, and do not take anything I say out of context. Now, at times I will discuss current events as I see fit and as I am guided, because they're very relevant to the truth that is reincarnation and its facts. Now, this is a very special cup runneth over a period of greater transitions. Now, transitions, smaller ones, are always happening in some place or other, among some people or other. But this one is one of the few that happens. Looks like end times, Armageddon, Revelations, the apocalypse. But it's not. We will go on. Once we get over what we're going through right now, we have to, because this is a time of harvest when we can now separate the wheat from the tares. There are always these few periods of harvest. That's worldwide, everyone and everything, the climate, and as I said, everyone and everything is affected. No one is unaffected. Now you can see my books that I have listed below for more information on that. Now, please do not forget that there's no peace in Gaza, and it's getting worse again. That ceasefire where I fire, I Israel fire, and you cease because, I Israel, I am the superior being. So I can do whatever I want, but you must take whatever kicks I give you and be quiet because you are, well, that's the supremacist ideology and practices, of course. Now, as I said, there's no peace, there's still starvation. Children are being made alive on a daily basis, and other innocent civilians. No food, no water, no shelter, and disease, and it's deliberate. One of the many methods to commit genocide. We must not forget Gaza or the West Bank, and now that ethnic cleansing and genocide has also spread not only amongst the Palestinian people or of the Palestinian people, but also now to Lebanon. And you can watch, it will move to Syria inch by inch, and if they could, and if they had a choice, Iran and every single state in Muslim state, West Asia, North Africa, wherever, that's the aim, because Muslims are facing an existential threat, and the brown peoples in those areas, and they don't care whether you're Christians either, because remember now that the oldest Christians are to be found in these areas. It's not just Muslims. The oldest Christians are to be found there, and in East Africa as well. Now, please do not forget the children and the victims of war in Sudan. That is like just horrific beyond compare. But the one in the Levant, that conflict is what my guides want to, for specific reasons, which you will learn later on, want me to concentrate on because it's providential. So do not forget, 15 million or more people in famine in Sudan. And Israel is involved in that too. It's also involved in Colombia. It's all over the place, making mayhem and mischief. Wherever America is involved in making mischief, Israel is there too. What do you expect? They're brothers, children of Britain. Don't forget Yemen either. Don't forget the DRC. Any place where there is conflict, do not forget the children, even the children. Don't forget the children of the perpetrators like Israel either. Because children have a right to play, to clothing, to shelter, to education, to food, to water, to medicine, proper health care, to be loved. And they should not, there's no excuse why they should be caught up in adults and their forever wars. So please do not forget the children in conflict zones, zones of conflict, because every child belongs to all of us. Now, as I said, I'm now going to begin our discussion on the Playbook of Supremacist ideology and practices. And remember, this video is for entertainment purposes only. Now, I'm going to use the examples of what's happening today just as an introduction before I begin. Today, what we're going to be doing is this one, this would be the third video, and it is going to deal with Zionism. And I'm going to let the Zionists, the founders and the leaders of Israel, in their own words, explain what Zionism is. I think they are the best ones to explain, and then we will now understand what is happening when they explain it themselves, their aims and goals. We will now understand exactly what is happening, and no matter about the spin and the gaslighting and the propaganda that they spew and America spews and the Western media spews as to what Zionism is, and confounding it with Judaism. They, the founders and the leaders throughout the decades, are the best ones to say exactly who they are, what they do, what they intend to do, and how they think. So that's what we're going to cover today. However, I'd just like to comment on current events that we're seeing now and how it fits into supremacist ideology and practices. So now I'm going to start reading so I don't get talking and then I don't know how to find my spot back on my paper, because I don't want to forget anything. Now, I'm going to make, though, before I get to that actually, see, I wasn't reading and I forgot. I will make a comment on what an imperfect messenger that we often hear Christians use when they want to give an excuse for someone who is doing horrific actions, and they say, well, you know, God sometimes sends us imperfect messengers. As I said, and I did a video on how to recognize guides, teachers, and I spoke about shamans, psychic medium, and prophets. Well, as I said, no one on earth is perfect. We're all imperfect, whether we are guides, teachers, shaman, psychic medium, messengers, we're all imperfect. Now, the imperfect messenger that Christians, and especially nowadays these evangelicals, like to use when they support and advocate for people who do despicable actions, commit despicable actions, cause a lot of suffering, spread a lot of hate and division, and are just plain cruel. They like to say, oh, well, you know, God sometimes sends imperfect messengers. No, that's not what imperfect messenger is. I should say an imperfect messenger. As I said in past video, our messengers, prophets, guides, and teachers are imperfect. But the messages they deliver should never tell us to hate, cause harm, or tell us that some are better than or less than others. They never tell us about us versus them. They speak of all our brothers. They don't care about the mask, race, and color, language, and all of that. I call those stupid masks, and it's around and because of these masks that we commit so many spiritual mistakes or sins and incur karmic debt. And that's what we're all here on earth doing, trying to expiate, some of us, the karmic debt that we've incurred, and usually because of these masks. Now, as I said, some of us use this terminology as an excuse to explain our psychological inconsistencies. what I call our hypocrisy. But what is a psychological inconsistency? When our belief system or thoughts contradict our actions, that is what is known as a psychological inconsistency. Now, for example, let us take many a Ku Klux Klan or KKK member. Let us take one who's a judge and a devout Christian. So you have the law there, imposter, the imposter justice of man's law. Okay, but still, it functions. And this member, KKK member, is also a devout Christian. How does he or she justify lynching a pregnant woman, black woman, African American woman, and then proceed to stomp the fetus from her womb or abdomen, and then bashing that fetus against the pavement, a tree, or tossing it somewhere? For that KKK member, that black woman is not human, much less that baby or that fetus. This is what we call dehumanization. So that dehumanization is one of the methods to explain our psychological or give reason for our psychological inconsistency, because you wouldn't do that to another human being. And if, for example, well, you follow the 10 Commandments, if you say you're a devout Christian, it says, do not, well, make unalive. But yet still you do that. Well, explain it. You dehumanize. This person is not human, so you can do that. Let us think about another example. And now I got this example and I thought it was just absolutely genius, actually. I used to watch Hawaii Five-0, the original Hawaii Five-0 that started in the late 60s up into, I think, about 75 or 78. Now, I had a crush as well. I'll just throw that in there on the star, Jack Lord. I thought he was so handsome. But anyhow, that's beside the point. Now, in one episode, there was a family and they came from somewhere in the mainland and they went to Hawaii, but they were on, it was something they did as they went from place to place. So what they would do, the children would go and they would get jobs, whether it be in a beauty salon, a gas station, a store, wherever, and then they would make unalive the owners, and then they would rob them. So at the end, Steve McGarrett, that was the character, Jack Lord was the actor, he said, ask them, why did you make unalive all these people? And the woman, the matriarch, she was the ringleader actually, she said, well, they ain't kin. In other words, they're not our relatives. They're not our blood relatives. And he said, okay, so why did you rob them after you made them unalive? And she said, well, they's dead. In other words, if those people are unalive, then whatever they have is finders, keepers, right? So that explained her actions, and you can see what's going on there. Now, I'm going to now give you the story, and this is a true story, This is historical fact. In 1964, a part-time um, Baptist pastor in Mississippi, in Neshoba County, he made a plan. He hatched a plan with in league with the sheriff department and the police department in that county. And what was this plot? Well, they had burnt in the county a black church. Now these three young men, barely in their 20s, civil rights workers, went to speak with these people. That was why they actually went to the county. There was James Cheney, he was black. And there was Andrew Goodman, he was Jewish. And there was Michael Schwerner, he was also Jewish. Now what they did was they kidnapped them. And when they went missing, and when that report went out, they eventually found a burnt out car, and 7 days later they found their bodies. Now, why did they go there? Because, as I said, they had burnt down a church, okay, and they had gone to speak with the community. Now, because of this act, this was very instrumental in hastening the passage of the 1965 Voters Act to prevent the disenfranchisement of black voters. And of course, that's the South Mississippi. So that was rampant there. And we know that's been going on since Reconstruction, okay, after the Civil War. And after the Union soldiers moved back and were no longer guarding the South. Now, as I said, now that Voters Act, okay, was, should we say, hastened as well because of this incident. And of course, it was gutted recently by that disreputable Supreme Court in America. And on that Supreme Court sits one of the most horrible judges on that court is a black man, which shows you that the masks do not matter. Suffering does not ennoble. And we, each of us, wears many masks in a given lifetime. For example, I'm here, I'm masked female, citizenship Canadian. I'm race black, even though in actuality I'm just a kaleidoscope, really, including of ethnicity, Sephardic Jew, Ashkenaz, Irish, Anglo-Norman, Welsh, Scottish, and of course, Taino, Ashanti, Ghanaian, and I cannot remember the group in Nigeria as well that I recently found out. Race, white, or if you want to put, and black and brown, I suppose. So each of us wears many masks. However, we tend to veer towards the mask that has the most power. So for that Supreme Court judge, it's not the race mask that has the most power It's perhaps his political persuasion that has more power than the mask race. And so he would veer towards that. That's why he would find, it doesn't matter to him whether black people can vote or not, because he's okay. He's Republican and he's a judge on the Supreme Court. So he feels he is above and beyond the discrimination, the bigotry that the lesser black people, if you want to put it that way, have to face. So that's just a lesson. But getting back now to our story here. So in 1980, August 3rd, okay? Oh, before I go on to that, the pastor, his name was Edgar Ray Killen, and he was not prosecuted until in the 2000s. Now remember, that's from 1964. He was only prosecuted as the ringleader in 2000s. He died in 2017, and it was not a very big charge that they brought against him. However, in August, so it's on August 3rd, 1980, Ronald Reagan, and I'm going to start reading now so that I don't go all over the map. Ronald Reagan launched his presidential campaign, his 1980 presidential campaign, from that place. And and he gave a speech about states' rights. Okay, it was a wink, wink, nod, nod, dog whistle to white supremacists and segregationists. And so, states' right. Now remember, we spoke about that in one of my other videos about the lost cause ideology and the daughters of the Confederacy, the United Daughters of the Confederacy, and that's what they propagate. The lost cause ideology about states' rights, that the Civil War was about states' rights. Well, yes, it was about states' rights indeed. The right of states to own black bodies, the rights of states to own slaves. That's what it was all about. So Reagan, as a nod to that, he launched his campaign from there. Now, many, including a lot of Democrats, like to laud Reagan and the 1980s and his administration. They see it through a rose-colored rearview mirror. Well, it wasn't. Let me tell you about Reagan. Now, he was the first president to enact actually more than 60% of the old version of Project 2025 from the Heritage Foundation. We think about student debt, Reagan. A lot of neoliberal economic policies, Reagan. The filth, the division that exists in the media landscape and the fairness doctrine, he was behind that as well, Reagan. And bringing the full-fledged, no longer hiding of religion in politics. Now, America, with its Bill of Rights and following in the model of Cyrus' Bill of Rights, it's not supposed to be a theocracy. So religion's not supposed to enter into politics. Well, Reagan took off the veil. It was a thin veil before, but he just completely took it off. That's Reagan. So he thought, and this was during his run for the governor of California back in the 60s when they had all the student protests. And of course, students, a lot of people were educated. They weren't going to drink the Kool-Aid that unscrupulous politicians and the rich people were trying to feed the society, you know, the corporations, I should say, and big business. And so if you read my book, I give the story there. They thought, you know, these kids were being too educated, so you have to, can't have everybody going to college and university. You have to select the few. And so, well, the result is student debt, right? You cut it down when people have to fork out the money and get into debt, right? So you'll have less people and more people for you to feed the Kool-Aid and to brainwash and gaslight. And this was also the time, the beginning of what I referred to in my last video, the Buttonesque, Benjamin Button, when you go backwards, of America. This is when it really went on steroids. And it's been going back ever since, and now, well, it's way back before the Civil War. Now, getting on to that, you can see all of this described in my book, Two Faces, that's the title, Cyrus' Bill of Rights, and Hitler's Aryan Paradise. Now, back to the imperfect messenger. Once again, we must never use this term as an excuse to indulge those who harm their brothers and advance cruel policies and encourage atrocities against others, especially against the most vulnerable in society, because they help us to advance our selfish interests, whether it be to heralding our illusions of the second coming of Christ, or to cover our racism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, homophobia, and all the negative isms and phobias that we have. Now, the whore of Babylon, the golden calf, but the gold is not real but fake, the man with the cloaca mouth, the reincarnated Nazi, Ernst Röhm, who can no longer hide his fascination for young men as he did in Nazi Germany. Now, sexual orientation is a mask, and it's irrelevant, really, for love knows no masks. That person, that brother, and yes, he is our brother, who sits in the people's house in America, in that Manchurian regime, he is no imperfect messenger. No. And Christians don't use imperfect messenger as an excuse. No, he's not. He doesn't fit the description of an imperfect messenger. Now, he propagates hate and he does harm to the most vulnerable, selfish and without shame. So he is no messenger from the higher powers. Things will happen through him by unwittingly, because he'll cause us to realize certain truths. But he's no imperfect messenger, and he wasn't sent as an imperfect messenger. It just so happens that way. Now, if the deal with Iran comes to fruition after this MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, and if they get to a deal, then we can give him some credit. Although the courage of the great Persia is what stands out. It would be the courage of the great Persia that has forced the hands of their invaders. But we can give some credit. You must give unto Caesar what is due unto Caesar. And as I say, the great courage of Persia, I mean same way Puss Mouse, I know the same way him walk. Or the same way him walk, same way Puss walk. I know the same way him mouse. In other words, the manner in which a cat walks is not the manner in which he hunts for mice. Unintended consequences. Now, please see my books and videos for the messages that I've given as they manifest. And if you go through all the videos and through many of my books, you will see them manifesting, and there are an awful lot of them. Now, in the Playbook of Supremacist Ideology and Practices is projection, where the supremacist projects his actions and beliefs onto his victim. In this case, the world now sees that it is not Iran that was run by the mad mullahs and crazy, uneducated fools. Indeed, it is Israel and America that are run by religious zealots and cruel, mad, morally bankrupt brothers. See how Iran and its rulers comport themselves, measured, deliberative in their words and their actions, strategic and intelligent. The government, though, I say all this, but they should treat their citizens better. They shouldn't usurp the free will of their citizens, and human rights they should respect. And that goes for all countries, all societies, including America and Britain and Starmer. Good riddance. I don't know if this one will be better, maybe a little better, not that much. Who has taken away the free right to speech? Good riddance. But they should not have expected anything better from Starmer. You just have to look into his history. And Tony Blair. Now, as I said, we all need to do better. Now, Joe Biden and his administration are also responsible for the mess that you see going on now in West Asia. We cannot and must not blame only the current regime. No. Had that regime, the Biden administration, continued with Blinken and the others, ignore what they're saying now on, as they go about promoting their books or whatever their speeches. They were on their way, or rather their crusade to Tehran with their temptress, Netanyahu. That's America's temptress. Remember, Biden said he was a Zionist. Please listen to my videos 6 and 7 and uploaded in 2024 as I laid out the messages as I was given about their intention, and believe me, they would eventually have attacked Iran. Obama tried a rapprochement with Cuba and Iran, but Biden was no different from this regime. When it comes to Israel and foreign policy, Biden was exactly like this regime, no different. The thing is, with Obama, he tried and he worked with Cuba to stem that Ebola outbreak when he was in power. He was not a perfect president, no. But, you know, you're a politician in America, there are certain things that you're going to be doing, you know, like meddling in other countries and, you know, like most of them, the Americans are supremacists. Most of them at the end of the day. They are. Whether they're black, white, pink, or brown, they have a supremacist mentality. Now, Biden went backwards. Even with Iran, he went backwards. Added more sanctions rather than trying to reinstate the deal, the agreement that Obama had. No, more, because he's a Zionist and his aim, along with the neocons in his administration, was to eventually attack Iran. Now, all these old men, they all need to exit politics, most of them. Old men doing the same thing, repeating the same mistake, and expecting different result. Now, why do I say that? With regards to the Biden administration, and that they eventually would have done exactly what this regime did. They would probably might have executed it more competently, but they would have done exactly the same thing. They were building a case, as I laid out in my videos from 2024 and in my books. They were building a case, and it was similar. You could hear the drumbeat, and you heard it, for example, when Kamala Harris, in an interview, said, when she was asked who America's greatest enemy was, and she said, and she knew it was patently false, that it was Iran. And I responded to that, no, Miss Harris, you know that's not true. But actually, America is the greatest enemy of America. Now, the American mentality, no matter the mask of race, color, or anything else, is the same, one of supremacy. This is why they believe they can wage, and I'm talking about the politicians now, most of the, including the Democrats, they believe they can wage an illegal war against a country that basically has not attacked anyone, make unalive their children, destroy their livelihood, infrastructure, etc., and balk at the idea that America should pay any kind of reparations. On top of that, we confiscate their assets, and who knows how many millions, including hundreds of thousands of children perhaps, have perished over 47 years with America's sanitized, politically correct siege that they call sanctions. We use the straw man of nuclear weapon, and we know that a fatwa was declared that they would not build it. And of course, the complicit, the UN Atomic Agency. We know, it's just a straw man to destroy the country so that Israel can become the top dog of Western Asia with their empire building on the cheap. Now back to the subject of Iran proxies killing Americans in Iraq. Now this is all supremacist ideology. Only supremacists believe that they can invade the land of others, and when they dare to eject us, we label them terrorists. Look how far you come. But you know, there's I will do it in the next video about a Jamaican. It's like a little saying there about, you know, lick a finger say, come make we go thief, and ring finger say, come now, make we try it. But when they get to the thumb says, I'm not going to get involved. Do you see how far I am from all of you? Well, America is far. What is it doing all the way over there? I know about geopolitics. But anyways, let me continue reading. Now, in America, some states give a homeowner the right to shoot someone who invades their home. But this is what supremacists who believe that they have a God-given right to invade your land and you should welcome them and not eject them by any and whatever means. This is Israel as well as America in a nutshell. Hezbollah was an unintended consequence, as I stated back in 2024, of the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 1982. They came about as an intended consequence to drive the invaders from their lands. Now, Israel, I should say, expects that they should just walk in, and Hezbollah should not be there to chase them out. Leave it to the Lebanese government. You see, the Lebanese soldiers, army, they just moved as Israel moved in. They left that part so that the Israelis could move in, and then they moved a little further up. Israel would take Lebanon over once again. So get rid of Hezbollah, no one to fight, so you can just do whatever you want to do. That's the idea. Take away the missiles, you know, from Iran. How dare you? Who are you? Their means of defense, thank God. Even the whore of Babylon, the truth came out of his mouth the other day when he says everybody else has missile. So why should we be taking away Iran's missile? That is so you can do whatever you want to do to them. Well, I don't think Iranians are stupid. They've proven themselves not to be fools. Now, well, as my guide said, there shall arise an energy of Saladin that will bring all Muslims, whether they're Shias, Sunnis, Druze, Ismailis, together. Before we get on now to the subject of supremacist ideology and practices, as I said, we're going to talk about Zionism and Jews. Well, in this video, in the next video, I'll be speaking about Jews and the persecution. I'm just going to give a brief history of different incidents of persecution that Jews have endured for thousands of years. You take a trip around the world. Okay, so we will be talking about Zionism and out of the horse's mouth as soon as I finish this in about 2 minutes. Now, as I said, I subscribe to no religion. Remember that. But we must navigate in a world of these stupid masks. And I speak of peace. But I must share 4 messages with you. Actually, as I'm finishing my book on how to get to your past lives, how to reclaim them, how to know when you are told that you had a particular past life, whether it's real or not real. I go into that with Nefertiti and Akhenaten. And I'm excited to finish that book. I'm almost finished, but whenever I think I'm finished, they bring something else up, my guys, and I have to just go according to them. It will be finished when they say it's finished. But as I was looking through my automatic messages, I do automatic writing as well, because I'll ask questions and I do various things. And I was reading the messages from my guides and duly memorialized on November 24, 2024. And I actually just realized that these were there. And I'd asked the question, what will be some of the unintended consequences in the Middle East? Now remember, I memorialize my things, because we can always say, well, I said this, when it's not true, and we do it after the fact. But I memorialize whatever my messages. And this was the response. So the question was, show me some of the unintended consequences in the Middle East and the surprises. And it said, civil war in Israel, return of the Palestinians to their lands. Iran will not be isolated. Israel will be. That's 2024, November. They gave that answer. Also said, a little child shall lead them. A Saladin energy shall rise throughout the Middle East. A Saladin Christ energy of unity, more than anything religionless. Now, this is a recurring theme. They've been saying that to me in so many different messages, so many different ways, from back in 2024, as this is. And usually that comes through with one of my guides who wants me to say his name. And as I said in my other video, his name, Umar ibn al-Khattab. He's the one giving these messages with regards to Muslims. Unity. He knows, because he was there with the division. But wisdom. He was always a wise man of justice, but we do ascend. And he speaks of unity. And they also said, in due time, they will reveal from where this energy will arise. And they have since 2024, but for me to know, but not to say at this time to you. And they presented at that time as well, as I went through my messages, the partial description, and I won't name the person, of one of the members of the Israeli cabinet. It says the reckless, and I won't say the name, will soon understand that we live by the sword, we die by it. He is from a time long ago of savage men living in the mountains with a club. He never progressed beyond wearing the fur of animals like in the books. So think of the caveman pictures that we see. I guess that's what they were trying to say. He was one of those trapped in the molds of others with not much, many, they said not much, that's what they wrote, reincarnations, a very underdeveloped soul indeed. We will continue another time. That's what they said. And what they mean in the molds of others, that's if you have read my other books or some of my books, we speak about when we first came on earth, when man first came on earth and inhabited molds that was not meant to be there. We call them hybrid souls, and it is on them that the first cosmetic surgeries were done in the ancient world. That's for another time. Now, actually, I think I am going to take a break here, and I'm going to actually make another video on the Zionist definition and explanation of what they're about and their aims and their goals and how they intended to realize their goals. So I will see you in the next video. I didn't think that this introduction would take so long. So I will see you in the next video. Actually, I'm off you know what? I'm just going to pause it here actually and get back to it. We're gonna do it in just one video. Well, I took a little break. I had to drink water. Okay, so yes, we're gonna continue. I won't make another video. Supremacist ideology and practices weaponize historical suffering, victimhood, prejudice, and grudges to advance their ignoble agenda. Now, we discussed this in detail in the first video and throughout various videos, and this discussion is also in my book, and the poem I read a couple of videos ago about weaponize. Now, we will focus on the war, as I said, on Gaza, as I go through this supremacist ideology and practices. But of course, I'm bringing you on a tour of the world with examples from other time periods and societies. Now, Jews were victims of persecution, and as I said, we'll be discussing this in another video. The next video I will deal with that. But Zionism, as explained by Zionists, pages and pages of quotes that I've chosen to show who they are and what they are, in, as I say, in the horse's mouth. Okay, out of the horse's mouth, I should say. Now, Jews and black people and the Romani, I call them the victims of persecution. They are the three most persecuted group, I believe, worldwide. Now, let us say now, before we begin, I'm saying this so many times, before we begin, I don't know what's wrong with me today. We will make one thing clear, though, and I said that in the introduction. Some anti-Semites or anti-Semites will use the views espoused by and the incorrect actions that the government of Israel and its colonial settler policies and politics and Zionists as excuses to pervade their anti-Semitism. We must not. All Jews are not Zionists. And if you read historian Ilan Pape's 2017 book, 10 Myths About Israel, provides an unbiased interview of the history of Zionism and Israel and dispels all the myths and propaganda, all the gaslighting that we have been fed for decades in the West. Now, Zionism is a secular, political, nationalist, expansionist, anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, white supremacist, racist ideology and movement. And should I say, for the Zionist Jews, it's also anti-Christian. And for the Christians, actually, I would say it's anti-Jewish, because if you think about the second coming and the thing when they're all going to convert the Jews to Christianity, and those who refuse, well, I guess they'll make them unalive. Now, the seeds of this movement was actually planted by British politicians and anti-Muslim Christians who believe that when all Jews return to the Levant, Israel, it will herald the second coming of Jesus the Christ. What an abomination. And look what they're doing. Oh, Jesus the Christ would never be coming under those circumstances. And there's no second coming. I'm sad and sorry to have to report that. The politicians were motivated by geopolitical reasons, wanting to get a foothold in the Levant in what was becoming a disintegrating Ottoman Empire. Europe would get rid of the Jews, and the Jews would also serve as good proxies for the British. They would hold the space too. Uganda was actually a country considered by some Jews to make a homeland. Now, Zionists comprise Jews and Christians. Some Jews are Zionists, but not all Jews are Zionists. Not unlike Baptists who are Christians, but not all Christians are Baptists. As a secular, political, white supremacist, expansionist ideology and movement, as I previously said, born in Europe, Zionists are also comprised of Christians of different sects of Christianity, including Christofascists. As with all masks, as I previously discussed, Zionism has subdivided, adding different subsets of the mask. And the subset mask degrees of extremism. For example, we have mass Zionist with subsets, mass Jew and mass Christian. Zionist Jew has subset, mass Kahanist or subset labor. The more moderate belief is that all of the lands from Palestine, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, and all of the parts of Syria and Lebanon belongs to them. Moderate, of course, is relative, really. In normal people's language, Israel has just about no moderates. Their version of moderate is very extreme. Now, as I said, moderate is relative. The most extreme branches of Zionism believe that all the land from the Mediterranean Sea to beyond the Jordan River, including the lands of Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and as a matter of fact, the entirety of Western Asia and Egypt belong to them. They are builders of empire, and dare I say, builders of empire on the cheap with American money, weapons, and the blood of American soldiers. Both Christian and Jewish Israeli Zionists control American politicians, both Democrat and Republican, who have now become subservient. Even Joe Biden, the President of the United States of America, has taken on the mantle, declaring himself a Zionist. Perhaps through the temporal lens, this might explain his actions and complicity in the unquestionable genocide and massacre of Palestinians, which has earned him the name Genocide Joe. His enthusiastic support for Israel's 1982 invasion of Lebanon, an invasion that led to the horrors of Sabra and Shatila camps, where even horses were slaughtered in psychopathic frenzy, and the unintended consequence being the birth of Hezbollah to rid their land of invaders, is evidence in his statement, Joe Biden's statement to Menachem Begin, then Prime Minister of Israel. According to the Times of Israel, the senator, quote, the Senator Biden said he would go even further than Israel, adding that he'd forcefully fend off anyone who sought to invade his country. Well, I guess he believes Lebanon belonged to Israel, even if that meant making unalive, I won't say the word, making unalive women or children. So he was okay with that, making unalive women and children in 82. But there is salvation, and we're here to ascend the ladder of soul restoration. So we might have said that in 82, but we might have decided to change and to become better. But obviously, with the complicity in the slaughtering, the butcher of Palestinian children and babies, he obviously hasn't ascended in that state. Each one of us is here to expiate, advance, and restore our souls, and perhaps Mr. Biden would not hold those sentiments now if he had given himself more time and experience to expiate. But you have to read my book, and there's more explanation as to what I mean by that statement. Unfortunately, without a doubt, Mr. Biden still holds, as I just said, similar sentiments, judging by his unabashed complicity in what is unfolding in Gaza, with nary an ounce of shame or remorse. And remember now, this is an excerpt from my book. So, I use the present tense, but of course it's now the past. What a pity. We do believe that only Zionists can best articulate their movement in their own words. And so now I'm going to give a litany of quotations made by Israeli Zionists, including Israel's founders and leaders. These quotes span generations, decades, more than a century. There is no need for interpretation. These represent the unvarnished truth, not just words, but the actions that have followed. In so doing, we will avoid the regular gaslighting, spin, obfuscation, and games. In these quotes, you will see, we will avoid the regular gaslighting, the belief systems, the humanization, the playbook of this supremacist ideology and practices, and the accelerated actions to which we have now become spectators and are now bearing witness as in living color 24/7 in the glaring sun of broad daylight, an atrocity that will be one for all ages. that will leave an indelible stain on humanity and a stench that no deodorizer will ever neutralize, and a wound so deep that no cauterization will ever seal. And I will say, to the eyes of the soul, only unconditional forgiveness and unconditional love, truth and reconciliation will be able to make some headway in getting past all of this, because it has been to such a degree that we would want to say there will never be enough generations in temporal terms to avenge all the atrocities. In the spiritual, to the spiritual lens, we would say there would never be enough lifetimes to expiate. But then we know, through the spiritual lens, through the eyes of the soul, there is more than enough lifetimes to expiate. So unconditional forgiveness and unconditional love is required, will be required going forward. Now, here is the compilation of the selected quotations. Some of them I've taken, most of them from the reference. I'll put the reference down below. Mifta, that's a website, okay? Reputable. Okay, I'll put them down below, put the reference down below. And if you go into my book, I will give you the reference here actually of who's saying it and when they did say it, and to whom or what newspaper, TV station or radio station or speech that they gave, what audience. Okay, so here we go. Every quote, every time we do something, you tell me America will do this and will do that. I want to tell you something very clear. Don't worry about American pressure on Israel. We, the Jewish people, control America. And the Americans know it. I wonder how and why. Okay, this was said by Ariel Sharon on October 3rd, 2001. Remember that. We, the Jewish people. He's talking about the Israelis, so he shouldn't say the Jewish people. Control America, and the Americans know it. So Ariel Sharon said this October 3rd, 2001 to Shimon Peres, which was like he was involved in one of the terrorist groups back in the 40s that terrorized Palestinians and committed a lot of atrocities. And this was reported on Kol Yisrael radio. Next quote. There's a huge gap between us, in parentheses, Jews, and our enemies, not just in ability, but in morality, culture, sanctity of life, and conscience. Sanctity of life, remember that. They are our neighbors here. He's referring to the Palestinians. But it seems as if, and other countries, Muslim countries, but it seems as if at a distance of a few hundred meters away, there are people who do not belong to our continent, to our world, but actually belong to a different galaxies. Dehumanization. This was said by Israeli President Moshe Katsav. The Jerusalem Post. It was reported in the Jerusalem Post on May 10th, 2001. Jordan, it's another quote, is a part of Eretz Israel in history. Ariel Sharon, the butcher, when he became the prime minister 2001. Next quote. The Palestinians are like crocodiles. The more you give them meat, they want more. This is Ehud Barak from the Epstein files, who apparently the victim who had sued Prince Andrew, who they said committed suicide, had reported in her book, I believe, that how he had beaten her up, and that's when she decided to leave Epstein. She really saw Epstein was not her friend. He had beaten her up. I mean, really beaten her up. He said that the Palestinians are like crocodiles. The more you give them meat, they want more. Ehud Barak, Prime Minister of Israel at the time, August 28, 2000, and this was reported in Jerusalem Post, August 30th, 2000. Now, next quote. Everybody has to move, run, and grab as many hilltops as they can to enlarge the settlements, because everything we take now will stay ours. Everything we don't grab will go to them. Do you see what's going on? Still, the hilltops. Ariel Sharon, Israeli foreign minister, addressing a meeting of militants from the extreme right-wing Summit Party. This was reported in Agence France Presse, November 15th, 1998. Let us not be gaslit. Let me add that in here. The naked truth, right? This is what we are listening to. Not in the abstract, or, our musings or belief, maybe it's so, maybe it's not, but straight from the horses' mouths. David Ben-Gurion, the first president, our prime minister, I should say, 1948 to 1953, and then again 55 to 63. Now, he said all of these quotes belong to him. We must expel Arabs and take their places. And if we have to use force, then we have force at our disposal. This is ethnic cleansing, of course, and replacement. Remember Henry Ford and the replacement theory, that his conspiracy theory that Jews were trying to replace white Anglo-Saxon Protestants in America. Well, this is a form of ethnic cleansing and replacement. And this is from the book Masalha, and he was published in 2009, and it's on page 66. Next quote from Mr. Ben-Gurion. The compulsory transfer of the Palestinians from the valleys of the proposed Jewish state could give us something which we never had, even when we stood on our own during the days of the first and second temples. We are given an opportunity which we never dared to dream of in our wild imaginings. Ethnic cleansing, again, this was in the book by Morris. I'll try and list some of these below. The references, you can find them in my book Thoughts on the Past, so I'll just list that. Ethnic cleansing is 2001. He published it, page 142. Now, in many parts of the country, Ben-Gurion continuing, new settlement will not be possible without transferring the Palestinian peasants. Jewish power, which grows steadily, will also increase our possibilities to carry out the transfer on a large scale, which is what Netanyahu is now trying to do, trying to enlist the aid of various African countries who, the leaders must remember, their shoulders are not broad like that of Netanyahu's. They will be charged by the ICC. They won't escape because that court was produced or created for them according to those American lawmakers. Now, continue, that's Morris 2001, page 143. With compulsory transfer, we, brackets, have a vast area for settlement. I support compulsory transfer. I don't see anything immoral in it. Morris again, page 144. That's definitely ethnic cleansing and Lebensraum, which is what, living to increasing your space, expanding your living space for your population. That was one of the tenets of the Nazi regime. After the formation of a large army, in the wake of the establishment of the Jewish state, we shall abolish partition and expand to the whole of Palestine. This is in another reference, Flappen, 1987, page 22. This now is ethnic cleansing, expulsion, genocide, and land theft and expansion. And this is what they said. They went along with the United Nations in 1948, where they gave the majority of the land to the Zionist settlers, who numbered far less than the Palestinians. So they took away Palestinian land, gave the majority to the Zionists, left the least for the population that was a whole lot more. And he's saying here that he goes along with that, but wink wink, but we know what our aim is, but we have to start somewhere in terms of gaining legitimacy, and then after we continue on our aim and our goal, we continue on our journey. Now, Chaim Weizmann, Israel's first president. So Ben Gurion was the first prime minister and Weizmann was the first president. The indigenous population, Palestinian population, was akin to the rocks of Judea as obstacles. They were obstacles in their own land that had to be cleared on a difficult path. This is from Masala, 2009, page 17. Dehumanization and admission of the indigeneity of Palestinians, that they are the indigenous peoples of that land. Moshe Sharet, this is Israel's second prime minister, 53 to 55. We have forgotten that we have not come to an empty land to inherit it, but we have come to conquer a country from people inhabiting it. Think about that. You're admitting, and not what, for example, Golda Meir, she was a character, not admitting, as she would say, it was an empty land, terra nullius. Nothing was there. They came and they made the desert bloom. He's saying here that it seems as if they, the Zionists, have forgotten that they did not come to an empty land to inherit it. But they came to conquer a country from the people who were inhabiting it. Now, on the partition of Palestine into two states, he says, this is Moshe Sharet, the Palestinian That's in bracket. Arab reaction would be negative because they would lose everything and gain almost nothing. They would lose the richest part of Palestine. They would lose major Arab assets, the orange plantations, the commercial and industrial centers, and the most important sources of revenue for their government, which would become impoverished. Empty land, really. They would lose most of the coastal area, which would be a loss to the hinterland Arab states. It would mean that they would be driven back to the desert. And this is in Masala's book, 2009, page 59. So here, admitting what they're doing, that Palestine was indeed a thriving place that they found. And so admission that it was thriving and not an empty desert. There was a Riviera, not one that Kushner wants to build. A thriving society. This is land usurpation, thief, robbery, and forced displacement. With regard to the refugees, we are determined to be adamant. He continues, this is Charette. While the war lasts, once the return tide starts, it will be impossible to stem it. And it will prove our undoing. So if they are able to, if the Palestinians are able to return to their land, you see why they're trying to destroy UNRWA. As for the future, we are equally determined to explore all possibilities of getting rid, once and for all, of the huge Palestinian Arab minority, Palestinian Israeli citizens of Israel as well, which originally threatened us. What can be achieved in this period of storm and stress will be quite unattainable once conditions get stabilized. The stress he was talking was 1948 war. So here you see displacement. They're admitting displacement, genocide, expulsion, ethnic cleansing, forever war until Palestinian population is eliminated. Now these set of quotes now come from Joseph Weitz, director of the Jewish National Fund, Land Settlement Committee between 1932 and 1948. He says, the transfer of Palestinian, but they call them Arabs, so, it's the Palestinians they're talking about here, from the area of Jewish state does not serve only one aim, to diminish the Arab population. It also serves a second aim, no less important aim, which is to advocate land presently held and cultivated by the Palestinians, he says Arabs, and thus release it for Jewish inhabitants. Masala again. 2009 pages 94 to 95. So this is forcible displacement, land usurpation and expansion, and illegal settlement. He goes on, this is Weitz. It must be clear that there is no room in the country for both peoples. If the Arabs leave it, the country will become wide and spacious for us, Lebensraum. The only solution is a land of Israel without Arabs. There is no way but to transfer the Arabs from here to neighboring countries, to transfer all of them, save perhaps for the Palestinian Arabs of Bethlehem, Nazareth, and the old Jerusalem. Not one village must be left, not one tribe. This is from Morris, 2001, page 27. Here, ethnic cleansing, expulsion, forcible displacement, and land theft. Lebensraum, of course. 20% of Arab Palestinians left to provide serf slave labor. Serf slave labor. See? 20%. You leave enough so you can get your carriers of water, hewers of wood, your slaves, and your waiters. Serf, slave, labor. Once again, I come face to face with the land settlement difficulties that emanate from the existence of two people in close proximity. Only population transfer and evacuating this country so it would become exclusively for us is the solution. Yes, the Jewish solution. This is the Palestinian solution, the Palestinian question. Final solution, as according to Benjamin Netanyahu the other day. So you see a continuation. Nothing has changed. The people, the souls, or who we know them as, have changed, but the mentality, the attraction, they're all souls of the same affectation. Now, this one is from Arthur Ruppin, head of the Jewish Agency from 1933 to 35, and one of the founders of Tel Aviv. I do not believe in the transfer of individuals. I believe in the transfer of entire villages. Morris again, 2004, page 50. Expulsion, of course, this is showing displacement and ethnic cleansing. Now, Moshe Dayan, Chief of Staff of the Israeli military and Minister of Defense during the 1967 war. Now, he was the man who had an eye patch. If you are that old, or if you read a lot, yes, that's the man, the dashing. Well, they said he was a womanizer. I can understand that, because he did give the aura of, that dashing kind of guy. Okay, now, Jewish villages were built in the place of Arab villages, and he's very honest. Moshe Dayan, you do not even know the names of these Arab villages, and I do not blame you, because geography books no longer exist. Not only do the books not exist, the Arab villages are not there either. There is not one single place built in this country that did not have a former Arab population. This is erasure and displacement, obviously. We shoot at those from among this is another quote. We shoot at those from among the 200,000 hungry Arabs who crossed the line to graze their flocks. Arabs crossed to collect the grain that they left in the abandoned villages, and we set mines for them, and they go back without an arm or a leg. It may be that this cannot pass a review, but I know no other method, so he knows that it's illegal and it's wrong. It's against humanity. But he says he can think of no other method of guarding the borders. And so we see that continued in Gaza in 2023, 24, 25. With the flower trucks and that reprehensible aid thing that they put up, where they were shooting Palestinian men, women, and children when they came to collect aid or to get flour. We see the same thing there. And he said this back, I guess, in the 60s and maybe the 50s. But anyhow, it's in page 275 of Morris. So here you see a culling, thinning out of the herd, starvation, concentration camp, land theft, and occupation. So you see, they're doing exactly what they said they were going to do, and it continues from generation to generation. It's the playbook that they have, and they're following that playbook, the instructions. He goes on to say, what cause have we to complain, this is Moshe Dayan, about the Palestinians' fierce hatred to us? At least he understands and he's honest about it. For 8 years now, they sit in their refugee camps in Gaza. And before their eyes, we turn into our homestead the land and villages in which they and their forefathers have lived. Let us make our reckoning today. We are a generation of settlers, and without the steel helmet and gun barrel, we shall not be able to plant a tree or build a house. This is in Schleim, 2015, page 101. Admission as to why Palestinians would hate Israelis. Admission that they are land thieves and colonizers. Now, these statements here, this statement is from Yigal Allon. And he was a commander of Palmach, which was the elite force of Zionist militia Haganah, 1945 to 48, and Lieutenant General of the Israeli Army, 48 to 49. He says, so that would be back then, he says, the confidence of thousands of Arabs of the Hula Valley was shaken. We had only 5 days left until 15th of May, 1948. So he's saying this in 48. We regarded it as imperative to cleanse, think of that word, the interior. They're not people, right? Palestinians are not. So you have to cleanse them. They're disease, right? And vermin, so you have to cleanse the area. Interior of the Galilee and create Jewish territorial continuity in the whole of the upper Galilee. I gathered the Jewish Muktars, that's the kibbutz chiefs, who had ties with the different Arab villages, and I asked them to whisper in the ears of several Arabs that a giant Jewish reinforcement had reached the Galilee and were about to clean out the villages of Hula, and to advise them as friends to flee while they could. This is misinformation. It's like Genghis Khan when he would send couriers ahead to avoid a battle and tell people that he's coming with this huge army, and so that they would leave before he got there. So this is the same thing, misinforming. Or back in ancient Egypt with at the Battle of Kadesh, when the Hittites actually sent yes, it's the Hittites. They actually sent couriers or spread the news, the fake news, to misinform the Egyptian army. I think it was Ramses, Ramses II, that great promoter of him, say he was a real propagandist. He lived till he was 90, actually. And they informed the Egyptian army that, oh my God, the Hittites are so far away, they fled because they were so afraid of the Egyptian army. So what Ramses did was he scattered his army, and just gonna take it easy now. And lo and behold, he was surprised, and he had to quickly gather his people together. How did he know it was a trick? Was he what happened? I think he spotted something, runners or something, from the Hittites, and then he knew he had been fooled. So this is what this guy was doing now. Alon. And so the flight encompassed. So when he spread that fake news, which was the fake news that they also used in England at the Battle of Cadiz, um, with the Earl of Essex, was Walsingham the spy spread the news because he knew that some representative was an undercover, actually was like a double agent, so he spread the news to him, and then of course it wasn't so, and that's how one of the reasons they were able to win at the Battle of Cadiz. Just thought I'd add those in historical moments. So he spread that news to the Arab chiefs, and then tens of thousands fled because they thought this huge Zionist army was coming. And the stratagem, he says, fully achieved its objective. This is Morris again, page 122, and Morris 184. It's a couple of books. Fake news, misinformation, ethnic cleansing, and usurpation. Now, Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister, the one they assassinated, and they said it was actually Netanyahu had fomented and incited so much hatred and confusion that this incitement played a large part in the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. Now, he says, we walked outside, and I mentioned this particular quote before in another video. We walked outside, Ben Gurion, the first prime minister, accompanying us. Alon repeated his question, what is to be done with the Palestinian population? Ben Gurion waved his hand in a gesture which said, drive them out. So, Palestinians, when you say drive them out, it's like cattle. And that's what you say, you gather the cattle and you head them up, move them out, drive them out. Think about that. Dehumanization, ethnic cleansing, forcible displacement. That's what that statement is saying. Drive them out. And the Palestinian question, just like what the Netanyahu in his other incarnation as Julia Gumbos in Hungary in the 30s, and the rest of the fascists and the Nazis, the Jewish question. What of the Jewish question? Well, now it's the Palestinian question here. Now, this one is again from our gem, Ariel Sharon, Prime Minister of Israel, former Prime Minister and Defense Minister. That, oh my goodness, his name sends shivers, or used to send shivers down a lot of elderly Palestinians, because they remember all the massacres, the different massacres he led in their villages. Now, it is the duty, Sharon said, of Israeli leaders to explain to public opinion clearly and courageously a certain number of facts that are forgotten with time. The first of these is that there is no Zionism, colonization, or Jewish state without the eviction of the Arabs. He's talking about the Palestinians, and the expropriation of their lands. And this we get from Agence France, November 15, 1998. So this is ethnic cleansing, land theft, usurpation, expulsion, displacement, and the brainwashing of the Israeli Jewish population and propaganda. Now, I would go on with some more quotes actually, so I'm gonna put these pages here because I'll have something to give you as well at the end of what the Palestinians, their quote. a few of them, what they have to say to explain how they feel. Now, the Oslo Agreement is very important for the Palestinians since it is the only official agreed upon document they got. We have another document, a much older one, the Bible. Religion, again, use that, right? Divine rights for the chosen people, a chosen land for a chosen people. That's Ariel Sharon speaking at a Washington symposium on May 8th, 1998. We did not know what to do with them. He's talking about now this particular Aryan Bureau. He was a retired brigadier general. We did not know what to do with them. He's talking about the surrendered Egyptian POWs in 1956. There was no choice but to kill them. This is not such a big deal if you take into consideration that I slept well after having escaped the crematories of Auschwitz. Just imagine that. You go through Auschwitz and you do this. Suffering does not ennoble. Remember what I said about the author, Spiegelman's father with the black hitchhiker. Suffering does not ennoble. The Palestinians would be crushed like grasshoppers, heads smashed against the boulders and walls. This is Yitzhak Rabin. Yitzhak Shamir. He was a former Israeli prime minister as well. And he said this in a speech to Jewish settlers. The New York Times repeated this on April 1st, 1988. Now, he was one of the members of those terrorist organizations like Ergon back before 1948 that terrorized and committed a lot of massacres and awful things to Palestinians. Now, we have to kill all the Palestinians, make them alive, and the unless they are resigned to live here as slaves. Once again, slave comes up. And this is chairman, right, Heilbrunn of the committee for the re-election of General Shlomo Lahat, the mayor of Tel Aviv, October 1983. Another quote here. We declare openly that the Arabs have no right to settle on even 1 centimeter of Eretz Israel. Force is all they do or ever will understand. We shall use the ultimate force until the Palestinians come crawling to us on all fours. This is Raphael Eitan, Chief of Staff of the Israeli Defense Forces, and according to Becker, and this was reported by the New York Times, April 14th, 1983. It was also reported April 13th on Yedihot Aronot. When we have settled the land, all Arabs will be able to do about it will be to scurry around like drugged cockroaches. God, these supremacists love to use cockroaches to describe their brothers, which is what the Hutus used when they, was it 1993? I have it in my book, in the early 90s, and made unalive, massacred over 1 million Tutsis. The Hutus murdered over 1 million Tutsis in the space of 100 days. That's the Rwandan genocide. So, he said, when we have settled all the land, all the Arabs will be able to do about it will be to scurry around like drugged cockroaches in a bottle. And this is Raphael Eitan, Chief of Staff of the Israeli Defense Forces, New York Times, 14 April, as I said, 1983. I don't mind if after the job is done, you put me in front of a Nuremberg trial and then jail me for life. Hang me if you want as a war criminal. What you don't understand is that the dirty work of Zionism is not finished yet. Far from it. That's Ariel Sharon again. Oh. To Amos Oz, editor of Davar, December 17, 1982. That's after he had invaded Lebanon and overseen or facilitated the Christian massacre in Sabra and Shatila refugee camps, where even the horses were not spared. The Palestinians are beasts walking on two legs. This is Menachem Begin in his speech to the Knesset, and he's quoted in Amnon Kapeliuk, Begin and Begin, and the Beast, New Statesman, the 25th of June, 1982. We walked outside. Ben Gurion, well, we stated that one when he said drive them out. Now, it is the duty of Israeli leaders to explain to public opinion clearly and courageously a certain number of facts that are forgotten with time. The first of these is that there is no Zionism, colonization, or Jewish state without the eviction of Arabs and the expropriation of their lands. And I think we did state that one as well. So there's kind of like repetition here. The thesis that Yoram Bar, actually Porath, who actually said that. That was in 1972, July 14th, and it was reported in Yedehot Aronot. The thesis that the danger of genocide was hanging over us in June 1967 and that Israel was fighting for its physical existence is only a bluff, which was born and developed after the war. So you imagine now when we hear Israel is facing an existential threat that is parodied by the West, both Republican and Democratic administrations and Europe and the Western media, especially the American media. You hear them admitting here that it was only a bluff. They spread that propaganda. They developed that after 1967 war. And that's the same war in which they bombed and bombed and bombed the USS Liberty and made unalive more than 30 US sailors, injured more than 130. And when the other ships came to help them, they bombed those ships as well. And they kept bombing and bombing and bombing. And then United States politicians, they covered it all up. And I think, Thomas, I wrote about that in the book, and I've spoken in some of my videos about this before. This is, they make unalive Americans, and American politicians cover it up, and Israel is your friend. This 1960, here they admit, is just all a bluff. That, their physical existence is threatened. Now, this was said by Israeli General Matityahu Peled in Haaretz, March 19th, 1972. There was no such thing as Palestinians. They never existed. Now, this is Golda Meir. June 15, 1967. No, she's a sample. She's the one that spreads this. She says if Palestinians love their children, they would get out of Israel. But how she framed it was, the Palestinians hate us, hate the Zionists more than they love their children. So she blames Palestinians for the suffering that she and the other Zionists inflict on them, blaming the victim for what you're doing to them. That is supremacist ideology. That's part of the playbook. And she also didn't care about the Mizrahi. She's Ashkenaz. She didn't care. European Jews, white Jew, I guess they would maybe think. She didn't care about the Mizrahi. She said they complained too much. I speak about that in my book as well. They complained too much. They were outcast, the ones coming from Yemen and the rest of the Muslim world. The Sephardis also, the North Africa, Iberian Peninsula. Didn't care about them. And that's where the cracks in Israeli society, there will be a civil war, as my guide said. You can see that now. It's bubbling up. Whenever they no longer have the boogeyman and a forever war with others, they'll turn on each other. It's coming up because Israeli society is a very fractured and racist society with European Ashkenaz. Don't think much of the darker ones, even though the darker ones also help to commit the atrocities that we see going on now. Now, Jewish villages were built in the place of Arab. Well, we did say that, I think, did we? With Moshe Dayan. I think we said that. Now, how can we return the occupied territories, Golda Meir said. There's nobody to return them to. Well, of course not. It's just like what I had said in the intro when I spoke about the family that was making unalive the owners of businesses and then going ahead to rob them. Well, that's what she means here. If they're either expelled or made unalive, genocide, then who's there to claim anything? They have no owners, finders, keepers. Now we go on. We must do everything to ensure that they, the Palestinians, never do return. And by the way, Golda Meir said that on March 8th, 1969. How can we return the occupied territories? There's nobody to return them to. Now, here, we must do everything to ensure they, the Palestinians, never do return. Assuring his fellow Zionists that Palestinians will never come back to their homes. The old will die, he says, and the young will forget. That was Ben-Gurion in his diary, dated July 18, 1948, and is quoted in Michael Bar Zohar's Ben-Gurion, the Armed Prophet. It's published in 1967 on page 157. Now, the term annexation is out of place. The measures adopted relate to the integration of Jerusalem in the administrative spheres and furnish a legal basis for the protection of the holy places in Jerusalem. This is Israeli Foreign Minister Abba Eban, okay, at the United Nations Assembly, July 4th, 1967. Okay, so we shall reduce the Arab population to a community of woodcutters, here we go again, and waiters. Rabin's description of the conquest of Lydda after the completion of Plan Dalet. And this was by Yuri Rabin's, describing what Yuri Lebrani, Ben-Gurion's special advisor on Arab affairs, said, 1960. And this is from the Arabs in Israel by Sabri Jerias. Now, I vow that if I was just an Israeli civilian and I met a Palestinian, I would burn him. and I would make him suffer before making him unalive, sorry. With one hit, I've killed 750 Palestinians in Rafah, made unalive 750 Palestinians in Rafah in 1956. I wanted to encourage my soldiers by raping Arabic girls, as the Palestinian women is a slave for Jews, and we do whatever we want to her, and nobody tells us what we shall do, but we tell others what they shall do. This is Ariel Sharon again. Oh, what a guy. I hope he has learned. I hope he's learning. I hope so. In an interview with General Uze Murham in 1956, I don't know something called international principles. I vow that I'll burn every Palestinian child, listen to this one carefully, that will be born in this area. The Palestinian woman and child is more dangerous than the man, because the Palestinian child's existence infers that generations will go on, but the man causes limited danger. Ariel Sharon in that same interview with General Uzmerham. And so we see when they target children, Israel targets children and babies. It is deliberate. It is part of a strategy. It is a plan written, followed, and it's been going on from the get-go. And we hear the reason. We could infer the reason. But when I'd written those poems and the essays back in early 2024 and the poems in 2023, 2 months after the October 7th, that horrible event, I had not read these steps, but you could see, and here it is, proof that they do it deliberately. And even what happened in Iran with those school children as the opening salvo, those little girls, it was not a mistake. Trust me, it wasn't. Because the foolish man who is the Secretary of War in America, anyways, thinks like them. And no doubt it was probably a planned thing to send a message. Children and babies. The most spectacular event in the contemporary history of Palestine, more spectacular in a sense than the creation of the Jewish state, is the wholesale evacuation of its Arab population, which has swept with it also thousands of Arabs from areas threatened and or occupied by us outside our boundaries. This is Moshe Shertok. He was the latter Israeli foreign minister, and this was in a letter to Goldman on the 15th of June, 1948. We should prepare to go over to the offensive. Our aim is to smash Lebanon, still smashing Lebanon, Transjordan, and Syria. The weak point is Lebanon, for the Muslim regime is artificial and easy for us to undermine. Still going on. We shall, this is from 1948, this was Ben Gurion saying this one. We shall establish a Christian state there, and then we will smash the Arab Legion, eliminate Transjordan, Syria will fall to us. We then bomb and move on and take Port Said, Alexandria, and Sinai. Still empire building, but they're not going to get there. And they've even included Turkey now. They won't get there. Now, there are a few 100,000 Negroes, but that is a matter of no significance. The British authorities, that's what the British authorities said to Chaim Weizmann on the subject of the Palestinian prior to 1948. The Promised Land extends from the river of Egypt to the Euphrates. It includes parts of Syria and Lebanon. And this is Rabbi Fishman, who was a member of the Jewish Agency for Palestine, in his testimony to the UN Special Committee of Inquiry in 1947. Between ourselves, it must be clear that there is no room for both people in this country. I think we did say that. I did mention that already. Let us not ignore the truth among ourselves. Politically, we are the aggressors, and they defend themselves. The country is theirs. This is Ben Gurion saying this now in 1938. Let us not, he said, ignore the truth among ourselves. Politically, we are the aggressors, and they, meaning the Palestinians, defend themselves. The country is theirs. He's saying the country belongs to the Palestinians because, he says, they inhabit it. Whereas we want to come here, to Palestine that is, and settle down, and in their view we want to take away from them their country. It's a speech he gave, Ben Gurion, in 1938. Now it's quoted in Simcha Flapan, 1979. A partial Jewish state is not the end, but only the beginning. And I think we did refer to that. That's when they were saying, okay, we'll go along with the, with what maybe the UN would do. But in a letter to his son in 37, he says, a partial Jewish state is not the end, but only the beginning. I am certain that we cannot be prevented from settling in the other parts of the country and the region. West Asia, Egypt. Just think about that. 1937, a letter to his son. And then in 36, he says, we and they, the Palestinians, want the same thing. We both want Palestine. Only thing was Palestine belonged to the Palestinians. And that is the fundamental conflict. Apart from the political danger, I can't put up with the idea that our brethren are morally capable of behaving in such a way to humans of another people. Now, and unwittingly the thought comes to my mind, if it is so now, what will be our relation to the others if in truth we shall achieve at the end of times power in Eretz Israel? And if this be the Messiah, I do not wish to see his coming. This wonderful man, Ehud Hakim, Russian Jewish writer and philosopher, in a letter written in 1930. Yeah, indeed. If this be the Messiah, you do not want to see his coming. Just like for the zealots, as I say, there is no second coming if the butcher of children and babies that you are complicit in and you encourage to think you can accelerate the second coming. What an abomination of Jesus the Christ and his teachings. That homeless hippie, his only possessions, the clothes on his back and the sandals on his feet and the sash around his waist, who said, suffer the little children and forbid them not to come unto me, and the least that you do to them, you do unto me. Psychological inconsistency we are seeing there with these Christian Zionist zealots. like Huckabee, Ted Cruz, and Cory Booker, all these people. But they're all our brothers. In due time, they will see the error of their ways, as we all do, as I have. Spirit the penniless population across the frontier by denying it employment. Both the process of expropriation and the removal of the poor must be carried out discreetly and circumspectly. This is Theodore Herzl. He's one of the first ones to talk about, Zionism and what have you. Founder of the world, and he was an atheist actually, founder of the World Zionist Organization, speaking of the Arabs of Palestine. And this is his 1895 entry, his diaries, June 12th. And now these are undated, so I'm just going to put them out there, okay? After we become a strong force as a result of the creation of the state, we shall abolish partition and expand. We said that already. It's not a matter of maintaining the status quo. We have to create a dynamic state oriented towards expansion. There are some who believe that the non-Jewish population, even in a high percentage, within our borders will be more effectively under our surveillance. And there are some who believe the contrary, that it is easier to carry out surveillance over the activities of a neighbor than over those of a tenant. I tend to support the latter view and have an additional argument: the need to sustain the character, the ethno-religious character, that is, of the state, which will be henceforth the Jewish, with the non-Jewish minority limited to 15%, that 15 to 20%. I had already reached this fundamental position as early as 1940, and it is entered in my diary. And this is Joseph Weitz, head of the Jewish Agency Colonization Department, from Israel, an Apartheid State, by Uri Davis, on page 5. And the first thing about, after we become a strong force as the result of the creation of the state, we shall abolish partition and expand the whole state. That was Ben Gurion. Let me extend Benny Morris's logic in arguing that if the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians in 1948 had been complete, there might have been peace. No Palestinian, then there's no need to worry about ethnic cleansing, right? And that's what, who was it again? One of those, I mentioned that in one of my things where, I will tell you in another video when I remember the name, where he said that there will be no problem of starvation, right? And problems in Gaza if the Palestinians were not there. In other words, they should leave. Ron Dermer, Benjamin Netanyahu's confidant. Now, we must use terror. Okay, so who said that? That if the Nazi program, continuing, for the final solution of the Jewish problem had been complete, for sure there would be peace today in Palestine, because there would be no Jews to go there and bother the Palestinians, right? So if the Zionists had succeeded in ethnic cleansing or genocide of the Palestinians in 48, then there will be peace in Palestine as well. This is Professor Baruch Kimmerling, Hebrew University, Jerusalem. You just, it's a argument between intellectuals, then let's put it that way. We must use terror. He's just saying that what Benny Morris said. If he extends what he is saying, then that's what one would have to assume then, right? It's not that he's agreeing with it, okay? Now, we must use terror, assassination, You're listening? We must use terror, assassination, intimidation, land confiscation, and the cutting of all social services to rid the Galilee of its Arab population. That's Palestinians they're talking about. This was Israel Koenig in the Koenig Memorandum. So you see, Israel, the Zionist state, is a terrorist state. It was founded on, by, and with terror. We must use terror, assassination, intimidation, land confiscation, and intimidation is the Mossad compromise that they have on so many people, and including the population, the politicians in America and in Britain as well, and elsewhere. So intimidation, that's with the compromise, and how they try to intimidate the lead prosecutor at the ICC, the African lady, she former ICC prosecutor, threatening her. Well, she didn't give in to their threats and said, oh, she's only an African woman. Well, you can, just minimize Africans, especially African women, racist and misogynist. So they state, and that's still going on decades later. Decades, almost a century later, all of this is still going on. Nothing new. What's new under the sun? So, if I were an Arab leader, I would never sign an agreement with Israel. It is normal. We have taken their country. It is true God promised it to us. There again, divine rights, hogwash, garbage. But how could that interest them? Our God is not theirs. There has been anti-Semitism, the Nazis, Hitler, Auschwitz. But was that their fault? They see but one thing. It wasn't the Palestinians who did all of that to you, to Jews. No. It's not their fault. So why are you taking it out on them? If that is what it, but of course it's not about that. It's just about power, empire building. They see but one thing. We have come and we have stolen their country. Why would they accept that? Truthful, isn't it? That was Ben Gurion who said that, quoted by Nahum Goldman in Le Paradoxe Juif, page 121. That's the Jewish Paradox, the book. And I've included all these quotes, as I said, in my book. Now, as I said, let me continue here. The targeting of children, as we can see, is crucial to the Zionist playbook, as in the words of Ariel Sharon, who was responsible for most of the most heinous atrocities perpetrated against the Palestinian people, including his facilitation of, once again, the Sabra and Shatila camp massacres in Lebanon, where not even the horses are my favorite animal. Not even the horses were spared. Animal cruelty. For the Nazis, their only red line was animal. They protected animals and formulated the first set of animal protection and animal rights laws that we know of. And if you contravene those, you could end up in a concentration camp. And see, with the state of Israel, they have no red lines. They are indeed the perfect poster child for supremacist ideology and practices, bereft, totally bereft of humanity. I don't know something, right? called international principles. I vow that I'll burn every Palestinian child that will be born in this area. Remember that. Always remember that, by Ariel Sharon. We see that playing out. Everything is still playing out. Now, the following quote that I'm going to read now shows the intention, goal, and encapsulates, were there any doubts that the Zionist movement is a racist, supremacist ideology and practices? Quote, we have to make unalive all the Palestinians unless they are resigned to live here as slaves. We read that, right? Now, I just want to say here, and I'm going to read this, and this part is taken from the University of Maryland's Minorities at Risk Project in 2010, and it illustrates the aim of removing Palestinians from their land. From the very beginning, Zionists have never lost sight of their goal. More than 1 century later, and 79 years since this Plan D, 47 to 48. The UN called for a partition, of Palestine, in which 54% of the land would become a Palestinian state and 46% would become a Jewish state. The Israeli Defense Force launched Plan D, in which various Palestinian populations who resided in the areas of strategic value would be subject to small-scale massacres in an effort to encourage them to leave their places of residence. Approximately 300,000 Palestinians became refugees as a result. During the War of 1948, the new Israeli state acquired vast new territories designated to be Arab lands, Palestinian lands. In the process, approximately 725,000 more Palestinians fled to Jordan and Lebanon, where they constituted 50%, that's in Lebanon, and Jordan, in Jordan. There are more Palestinians than than the indigenous peoples of Jordan right now, and 10% of Lebanon. Now, before I go, I'm going to read this, and this is from, these quotes are, indeed, let me just read. Indeed, these quotes and our identification in bold speak for themselves, parallel to the Nazi incorrect deeds to Jews. Zionists had their plans before the Nazis came to power. Like the Nazis, Zionists spoke of Lebensraum, ethnic cleansing, expulsion, and forcible displacement. They also committed massacres. The litany of them I mentioned in my book earlier. It's just a ton of them, including Lydda, the Trail of Tears of Lydda. Like the Nazis and parallel to them, the Zionists grappled with the question, the problem, the Palestinian problem and question. For the former, it was the Jewish question or problem, and for the latter, the Arab or Palestinian question or problem. There was the privation, the marches, as I said, like Lydda, the massacres, the mass graves, the rapes, and the summary executions. The Zionist plan was afoot before the plan of the Nazis. Nothing new here, because the playbook of supremacist ideology and practices has been and is the same throughout the history of man's sojourn on earth. The Zionists used the United Nations as a first step towards their eventual aim, legalizing it. of Arab and Muslim Middle East conquest. As we see today with the mercenaries using the veil of aid, I should say, we see what Moshe Dayan said, and we repeated that. Let me repeat it again. We shoot at those from among the 200,000 hungry Arabs who crossed the line to graze their flocks. Arabs crossed to collect the grain that they left in the abandoned villages, and we set mines for them, and they go back without an arm or a leg. It may be that cannot pass review because it's against the law, humanitarian law as well. But I know no other method of guarding the borders. Finally, eugenics appear to have played a role with Zionist ideology in the selection of policy of immigrants to Israel. And I quote Schwartz, 2005. That's a reference. Check my book. We would be remiss in not representing the Palestinian perspective in their own words, as spoken by Ahmed Yassin, founder of Hamas, a refugee in the Al-Shati camp in Gaza from the village of Al-Jura near Ashkelon that was ethnically cleansed in 1948. In an interview likely recorded in the 1990s, Ahmed Yassin, he was blind, I think, stated his view on Jews. We don't hate Jews and fight Jews because they're Jewish. They are a people of faith, and we are a people of faith. And we love all people of faith. If my brother from my mother and father and my own faith takes my homes, and expels me from it, I will fight him. I will fight my cousin if he takes my home and expels me from it. So when a Jew takes my home and expels me from it, I will fight him. I don't fight other countries because I want to be at peace with them. I love all people and wish peace for them, even the Jews. The Jews lived with us all of our lives, and that is true. There were Jews in Palestine. Palestinians were Christian Jews and Muslims and a few other religions. And we never assaulted them, and they held high positions in government and ministries. Many people don't realize that in the West. But if they take my home and make me a refugee like 4 million Palestinians in exile, who has more right to this land? The Russian immigrant who left this land 2,000 years ago, or the one who left 40 years ago? We don't hate the Jews. We only ask for them to give us our rights. And in a 1997 speech, he said, I want to proclaim loudly to the world that we are not fighting Jews because they are Jews. We are fighting them because they assaulted us. They made us unalive. They took our land, our homes, our children, our women. They scattered us. We became scattered everywhere, a people without a homeland. We want our rights. We don't want more. We love peace, but they hate the peace because people who take away the rights of others don't believe in peace. Why should we not fight? We have our right to defend ourselves. This is from Schmemann, and that's in my book, the reference, 1997. And as I would say, may the day soon arrive when the Palestinian people will no longer be used as the boogeyman, lab rats, guinea pigs, punching bags, hostages, and pawns for the state of Israel. May they no longer be used as political pawns for the West and some of our brothers in the Muslim world. May they no longer be treated, and I get goosebumps. Umar. May they no longer be treated as subhuman and children at best, and have agency to decide their own future, and not by men from afar, especially Britain and America, who stole the key to their homes and have ensured that they stay homeless for more than 80 years. Universal justice will soon sound its trumpet. Gabriel, the Archangel Gabriel, is blowing his horn. We shall soon see that horn is blowing, and that sword of social justice is piercing the crown. It's coming soon, sooner than we think. The pace is a quickening. And I'm gonna end this video here. And as usual, and I hope I can find my way here, hate, hitching a ride, hate, you know, before I start, let me just quickly say, none of us is without blemish. And although I appear harsh, I must deliver the message as I get them. And I am but human, and I hate to see injustice. But I know we're all brothers, and I pray sincerely and hope that we'll all get a hold of ourselves and think about the humanity in each other. Recognize that we're all brothers. Thank you for visiting my channel. Please do not forget to subscribe, give a thumbs up for like, share, and leave a comment. Hate, hitching a ride, hate, a contagion, a cancer metastasizing, an opportunistic bacteria, the cloud waiting to block the sun, hate, waiting to hitch a ride on the train of love, hate, the rat on its rat passage, hitching a ride on the boat to the plague, hate, the bedbug waiting for a suitcase, hate, the roach riding on our coattail, hate, the shadow always lurking behind, sometimes longer than us, just lurking behind the thin curtain, waiting for its turn on center stage to take us to a place not so far away, a blast back from civilization to barbarism, from knowledge back to ignorance, from wisdom to impudence. Hate never takes a holiday, always looking for the opportunity to hitch a ride on the train of love. Hate inhabits the same house as love within us. We're all tenants on this earth, not here to have dominion or to rule over anyone or anything. We are not here to have dominion over the fowl of the air, the fish in the sea, or the beasts in the fields. We're not here to have supremacy over our brothers. So let us be good tenants. Let us take care of ourselves and each other. Let us trod ever so lightly and take care of this planet we call Earth and all the creatures that dwell thereon. Remember that there is something greater than us. That is the fatherhood of God. We respect and show our love for that something that is greater than us by taking care of ourselves and of each other and the planet, once again, and all that dwell thereon. May we never try to flee our conscience so that we will always do correct actions. May we learn to walk a mile in our brother's shoes so that we can see the humanity in each other. May we respect the differences in each other and know that our Creator has no chosen few. May we find comfort in the knowledge that each of us is slated for redemption and none is excluded. May we find solace in the knowledge that it is not a question of if, but one of when each of us shall return to our Father. May we know that we are just tenants on this earth and take care of each other, the earth and all the creatures that dwell thereon. And may we always adhere to the divine principles of the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, doing unto others as we would have them do unto us. Love. May we know that which I do unto my brother, I do unto myself, for I am my brother's keeper. And may the tiny shrouds of light forever illuminate our path through the dark. May peace forever reside within us and between us. One divine, universal love.